Removing the brick feature in the kitchen, something I've never really liked ever since I first saw it. I think it was designed to store a bit of firewood and stuff underneath, and it did have sort of drawers on top, but it takes up a lot of room. And it's against this weird wall between my neighbours and myself, which sort of encroaches in a good 2 meters inside my kitchen in reality. But as you'll see, it's always been like that. It's never ever been. It was never part of the other side of that. Was never part of my property, because when you look at the bottom of it, there's as they normally you can have a quick look through spy hole there. The timber up and on top of it, part of the timber frame has completely deteriorated, and so it needs, obviously that needs replacing. You see that big chunk of it has just gone. It's just been so damp and horrible. And there you go, it just crumbles away. So that'll be a job to do shortly. So yeah, so this wall in itself, it's always been like that. What they tended to do would be to start some masonry about 30 centimetres up from the ground, or a foot from the ground, and then they would put in start the timber frame. That way, the timber frame was never anywhere near the ground, other than if they were putting a doorway in, which is the strange sort of Narnia doorway we've got in the other room. But here, that wall runs right the way across from one side to the other, which suggests that it's always been like this. For whatever reason they've done it. So it was a question of, there were some lovely timbers behind this old plaster as well that needed taking off prior to taking down the brick feature. So here we go, speeded up as usual. There's various bits of where they've done the dot and dab, where they put the insulated plasterboard onto the wall. That left areas of dot and dab there, a bit precarious because it's wafer thin. That particular section of wall between my house and my neighbours is wafer thin, as you've seen with the holes and stuff above. So it's a question of just trying to tap it off, and also you've got some of the GAN, which is the electrical conduit cable, which again just the stuff was stuck to it. So it's a question of just tapping that off, and then with my trusty Jemmy bar, working my way across the old mortar that's in front, and so I can see the beams. I much sooner look at beams and plaster, if I'm being honest. And you can see also on that you've got the horizontal beam on the bottom there, which is in fairly good nick actually. But the three uprights, it's had a little bit of rot on the bottom of. So a bit like around the corner there is just in front of where the staircase begins, under the stairs, and they were the same sort of thing where they had the horizontal wasn't. In fact, the horizontal on that side was in fairly poor nick as well, but certainly the uprights have been really well eaten away. So on this one, taking down this bit of plaster to expose the cob and the beams, which will then be sanded or ground down. And then we put a bit of linseed oil and stuff on there. So that's what we'll be doing there. It's just a question of what we will be doing on the adjacent wall, the adjoining wall between my neighbours and myself. I may well metal rail that and get some insulation between it. There are some timbers there, but they're in fairly poor nick, and obviously because it's a partition, can't really leave that open. So unfortunately, that will probably get just a lime mortar run across it. So it'll be, at least be able to sort of paint it, but it'll be up against these nice timbers here. And there's a sort of an angled beam that runs across the top there. Part of it's been cut out. I don't know whether it partially supports the beam that's running across in the kitchen or not. It's not particularly big, a section of timber. It's in three pieces, and a part of it's been cut out for the doorway, and another part was cut out. I think that's where they had the extractor fan for the oven. Possibly why that was cut out there. But that'll get sorted out at a later stage. And then it's it's all systems go to get the first fix electric sorted out so that we can then actually have a go at the cob, which I've never actually done before, but it looks fascinating and I'm very eager to have a crack on with it. I think it'd be superb to have a go at. And it's one of those things I don't think you can do it wrong, to be honest with you. So it's going to look as it looks, isn't it? It's going to look authentic, and obviously you're it's going to be brought in a sympathetic colour against the wood. So it'd be quite nice. And currently there's stacks and stacks of cables everywhere where it was all ran in. Everything was ran into junction boxes, and then the junction boxes fed off into the various sockets, so the sockets were all fed individually. Rather than what we would tend to do in the UK, you would run the two cables into one box, and that the second one would then run onto the next socket, and that way you just run it sort of looping it across, and then it finishes on the final one. So the final socket has just got a single cable going in, and that's what they call the radial. They don't tend to do a ring main in France. It's all individual rooms, and also in a kitchen you might have it might be on a couple of trips because you tend to run a lot of things within your kitchen, kettle and toaster and microwave and whatever, your coffee machine, da da da. So that way you've got a good supply for that. So they'd often split that into two, and then obviously your oven is going to be slightly bigger anyway. Your oven's going to be sort of 30 amp minimum, depending on what you're putting in there. So admit a 30 amp trip. I'll only be putting probably a single oven in. It's not going to need too much more than that, I would have thought, and an induction plate on top, which I quite like. I hadn't used one before, but past couple of years I've been using one, and I find them very useful. So the oven in here was gas, and it was run off bottles, obviously because it's rural, so they don't have gas streamed into the houses, which means that they buy bottles of gas. And there's actually, believe it or not, the oven itself had a little storage area that you could put the gas bottle in. I've never been a big fan of that. When I had the house in Normandy, I did it so that the gas bottles was in what they call the cave, which is like the basement, and the tube ran through into the kitchen, so that there was always a fair bit of distance. There was always at least a wall, in fact, it was a big concrete wall between that gas cylinder and the oven. So that's how I did it there. So here, I'll probably just run everything on the electric. I don't think I'll bother with gas bottles, but we'll see. Something for the future. So here I am taking out whatever nails and stuff, and still trying to get bits off the adjoining wall before we ever go at tapping away at the brickwork. Never liked this brickwork at all. I know quite a few of you actually love it. There's been lots of comments about how much you did like to keep it in that, but unfortunately, I really dislike it immensely. So it was always going to be going. It's in the wrong place. There's too much of it, and it attracts dampness. When I first went into there were sort of mushrooms growing on the underside, or toadstools on the very first one where I'm attacking it now. So I'll be glad to get rid of it, and also because you can't really get to the rear, which means that you can never really resolve the problem of the dampness if that's in place. So it had to go. Sorry to say, I'm not sorry to say, actually, I'm quite pleased to say, had to go, and that will be used as hardcore. When I put in paths and things in the garden, so it will get a second life itself as well. And if there's any full ones that come out, also they can be properly used as part of the new floor in the kitchen, which I'm probably going to do in these red briquettes anyway. They're quite nice, a wee bit soft, but I'd imagine once they're laid and grouted and put some sort of sealant on, they should be all right. So I just wonder how much they would wear when you're walking across them. But again, that's something for the future. So tap, tap, tap. I've turned the sound off on this because it's done at sort of 2.5 times speed anyway. So you're not gonna get a weird sound if I'd let the sound go on it. and it's just a matter of, I don't know what that is, possibly a fly or something working its way across the screen. Sorry about that. I'm not in control of animals flying across the mobile phone as I'm working, and there's a massive flies at the moment in and around this area. I think it's always been that way in the countryside. There's like a congregation of them in the front room, and they all, I don't know what they're doing. They all sort of fly around in a circle towards the centre of the room and nothing else. So I don't know what all that's about. If anybody out there is knows anything about flies, you can perhaps tell me why they do that. But here, yeah, there's quite a few coming in from, and there's no food in this. I mean, you can see it's bare at the moment, the kitchen area. So there you go, nice big chunk of blockwork out there. And then it's just a question of I've made an area just at the rear of where the fire pit was, and I'll just be loading it up into there. And that way then it's ready and it's at hand and it's clean for as and when I get to do the other things. Give it a little bit of tap there with a hammer, just make it more manageable as far as carrying's concerned. And then utilising a mixture of chisels and bolsters and stuff, and the jemmy bar just to work my way through. And the sections of this are in flint as well. So the bits that you don't see, where they've sort of filled in areas, particularly in the corner there, it's just a massive flint, and that's a tricky old stone to work with. So obviously, make sure you're wearing gloves if you're handling flint, as it's like razor blades in stone form. So I'm working my way across here, get the jemmy bar in. I can't put too much pressure on it because it just collapsed that wall if I do. It really is in a real state, the adjoining wall. So I think that's the best thing would be to do with that is to stud it out in metal rail, and then probably try and put a lime mortar directly over a plasterboard so it's looking a bit more authentic than actually plasterboard if that's possible. Try something new. And what else to say with this? Yeah, I wouldn't, even if this was in place, I wouldn't be storing wood in that part of the kitchen. It always seemed a bit bizarre. I mean, whenever I've had wood burners, the wood's always been at the side of where the wood burner is. So you normally have quite a nice sort of basket there, and you fill that out with all your bits of timber, so it looks quite nice. I don't think I'd be wandering backwards and forwards from the kitchen, getting bits of wood to then put back into the wood burner. And normally when the stuff that's stored outside anyway, most of your timber gets stored outside under shelter, so don't really see the need for this at all. I've got a few bricks there that I managed to save. They will be going to good use. And it was done this has been done in a sand and cement. This has not been done in a lime mortar, this. So unfortunately, we're going to lose a fair bit of the bricks. And a fair bit of the bricks will just be hardcore because try and clean up sand and cement on a thin briquette like that. You're not gonna win. So it's only the ones that really, there was a few on sort of the top surface where they'd done like a strange sort of draw system just underneath a worktop that they had. So they're relatively clean, but other than that, the rest of them are all sort of well tied and see the flies back. Right, so getting near to the end of where I'm sort of cracking on with it, and then we'll see a bit of the aftermath once we've gone through, because rather than just watching me faff about tapping out stone and that and moving backwards and forwards, we can get a bit of a look at it once a section of it's been taken down. So here we go. A fair bit of it's gone there, and you can see the top 30 centimetres or a foot from the ground is all stonework. So that would suggest that there's never ever been a doorway linking these two rooms. It's always been like this. I can't say what age this sort of brick feature was. It probably predates the renovation of the modernisation of the kitchen, which was done sometime in the late 1990s. And I've got a bit of evidence for that, so I'll show you that on the next video, because I'll be attacking the other side, the kitchen wall, where it meets the bathroom currently. So that to me screams little dining area there. It'd be quite nice there. You've got the light directly above it because you've got the Velux. It's a decent size. It's not in the way of the doorway. And then this is the other side then. So we've got most of it's been knocked out, and then there's lots and lots of roots growing in, and it's damp and it smells. So it was a good idea of mine to get rid of it, try and let this wall dry out a little bit, and then make good the wall in a lime mortar, which again should help the walls to breathe, but try and hopefully keep the dampness out. The problem we've got is that you've got soil directly outside, pressing up against the wall, and the walls themselves are soil rather than brick or block. So there's always going to be a certain amount of moisture that's going to get drawn in. I'll try and get rid of that as much as possible. So there you go, lots and lots of hardcore there waiting just to get cleared off. And that's the end of this video. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you'll like and subscribe and send me a nice comment, and I shall catch you up on the next video. Thank you.